Well, hello and welcome into Caden's Weather Center live coverage right now. We are paying attention here to the tropics. Obviously, right now our main concern is Hurricane Milton. The 11 p.m. advisory has now just come out here on this system. So we're going to pay attention to this storm very, very closely here. Welcome into the live coverage right now here as we are paying attention to this tropical update from Hurricane Milton here from the National Hurricane Center has now just come out right now, and as you can clearly see, still a Category 5 system that we're going to be paying attention to very, very closely here. So we'll go over the latest here in 1 second. If you do have any questions, make sure to, ask in the chat right now. If you continue, I will try to answer them as best as I possibly can right now. But welcome in right now into this live coverage here on Hurricane Milton as it approaches the west coast of Florida. So what's the latest advisory here from the National Hurricane Center? Well, we can clearly see from the National Hurricane Center, still 160 mile an hour Category 5 hurricane is still continuing on and will continue now to move off to the northeast. So now is, not moving east-northeast. It is following the National Hurricane Center track here and is following it and moving it to the northeast. The pressure has gone up by a pretty good amount. That shows that the storm is weakening, so that's good news right there. Gust is 200 miles an hour near that core of the storm right now. So, obviously, tomorrow night's going to be our biggest night for the storm here going into the storm. The forecast track did shift a little bit south, and that is something that we also could change, and we could be seeing a little bit more of an interesting scenario. So if we take a look here at the forecast track, Bradenton is right up here, St. Petersburg and Tampa is up here. So that is down, the storm is pushed south, and so far today we've seen more of a southern trend here, and the storm will continue to move off to the east-northeast. I believe it will be turning, and no, so it most likely will be turning that east-northeast turn here. As of right now, the National Hurricane Center has it in between Venice and Sarasota here, as of that new advisory did push down a little bit more off to the south here, and we're going to go over the models here pretty shortly, going over this and what we're expecting. Still, could we see the storm go up a little bit more off to the north? We could. Could we see it change into Cape Coral and Fort Myers area? We still could. You guys are still in the cone, but no matter what, hurricane conditions will be most likely in this whole area right here. So, something to watch very closely here. Excuse me. But I do want to pull up right now here. This is the National Hurricane Center, obviously, and what we're looking at with the forecast track. We can clearly see there's that wind field currently starting to grow a little bit more as it continues now to get a little bit more organized here. The storm will continue to move off over here to the northeast, as we're not seeing that more of an eastern type of system as of right now here. I don't know if they've come out with the experimental cone yet. Nope, still not yet. But if we take a look here at the forecast, we can clearly see it did push down just a little bit more off to the south here, and that's something that could impact a little bit more of certain areas, and we'll talk about that here shortly. But right now here, hurricane warnings still are going to be stretching across majority of the central and parts of the northern Florida peninsula here, and tropical storm warnings could still also be continuing on down here in southern Florida. Even in the Keys could be seeing some tropical storm, as we're expecting the wind field to expand a pretty big amount here. Taking a look here at the peak surge, if I update it here, so a little bit more of a different change here. This is my first time seeing it as well, so a little bit of a different scenario here according to this, and I want to go deep into this really quickly here, because a lot of people are kind of questioning, why is the Tampa Bay still going to get that 10 to 15 feet of storm surge? The only reason why I would possibly say that the National Hurricane Center says this, even with the storm kind of going off to the south, that should limit more of the storm surge that does go into the Tampa Bay. But no matter what, we could be still seeing some pretty big impacts, because with this storm, as it will be sheared, that will kind of shove a little bit more of that northern eye wall up here to the north, and that is if the storm doesn't push any more down to the south. So still, we could be seeing a possible landfall no matter what in this area, and that could impact the storm surge, a pretty significant amount. But right now, as of this update, the National Hurricane Center is anticipating a 10 to 15 feet of storm surge here in the Tampa Bay area. So something to pay attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of updates here tomorrow night is our night that we need to be paying attention to right now. So obviously we have a lot to be paying attention to currently with this tropical system. And 3 to 5 feet could be expected over here on the east coast of Florida. So still, it wasn't an insane amount of update, but still a little bit more of an update here for the northern area for the Florida Bend. Kind of did go down just a little bit here. The rainfall threat here we can clearly see has been really consistent with this. This is going to be our biggest area right now here for rainfall, and we don't usually see this for Central Florida. We can see some of that red just off the coast here of the Tampa Bay. That possibly will be over a foot of rain in the Tampa Bay. So, and obviously Florida, this is the last thing that the Florida needs currently because of how saturated the ground is already. So we want to pay attention to this storm no matter what, because if we're expecting heavy amounts of rain over here in the Tampa Bay area, well, what could we be expecting throughout the rest of the state? Well, currently Orlando and the east coast of Florida is definitely expected possibly maybe a foot of rain. So this will be a wind maker and a rain maker for whoever, kind of gets impacted with this storm the most. But you can clearly see right here, that we don't usually see that high risk here for flash flooding in the state of Florida. And you can see that that does include Tampa Bay and Orlando here. So kind of the central coast here, or the Central Florida, could be seeing the high chances here, and that is through Thursday morning. So this will obviously start tomorrow afternoon, but still, majority of Florida in that red. All of Central Florida is in that red right there, and that is something to pay attention to. And then over here, the yellow, we could be seeing a possible slight risk for some big flooding as well, and I believe that is, that's the up-to-date one here. Let's take a look at the storm surge, because I know this is our biggest concern as of right now for Hurricane Milton, especially when we kind of have that, forecast track changed itself a little bit, kind of going in between Sarasota and Venice, just like we said. That will bring a little bit, that will be a pretty devastating storm surge that we could be seeing down over here in Fort Myers, Cape Coral area. That could bring some pretty heavy and big storm surge there. But as the storm has pushed off to the south now, that will bring less over here into the Tampa Bay area. And if you do have any questions about any areas, please make sure to leave it down in the chat below, and I will try to get to them as best as I possibly can. But if we zoom in here, take a look at this right now, we can clearly see above 9 feet could be possibly in these areas right over here. In the red, that could be possibly above 9 feet. The orange is possibly 6 feet above normal ground, and then the yellow is still greater than 3 feet above ground. So this could be pretty bad here for certain areas. Sarasota, you guys could possibly be getting some of that 9 feet. We'll go a little bit more in depth in this a little bit here. And then the Tampa Bay, you can clearly kind of see still some areas in the red, but not as much as it was earlier this morning. The good news is Clearwater area and kind of just these beaches right over here on the western side of like Clearwater, Dunedin, Palm Harbor, you can clearly see that will be greater than 1 feet or greater than 3 feet above normal ground. I would say majority of the storm surge, if even though with the storm on its track to the south, we could still be seeing some storm surge over here of greater than 6 feet in some areas, and then greater than 3 feet in majority of the areas now. That is including into the St. Petersburg area, and then also over here kind of near McDale Air Force Base, that is over here as well. So downtown Tampa definitely needs to be on the lookout as well for this, because no matter what, storm surge will be a big concern here. Taking a look here at the tropical storm wind speed probabilities and also when could they arrive, we can clearly see most of those tropical storm wind speeds will start to arrive here tomorrow afternoon here at 2 p.m. and we can clearly see it will really start to race off tomorrow, waking up early Thursday morning, we will be seeing it kind of leave the coast here of Florida, but chances are pretty high up there right now, but prepare tomorrow afternoon. So finish up your preparements right now, because we have these, tropical storm conditions will be going down tomorrow afternoon, and that will deteriorate a lot. So here's the, the satellite here. We can clearly see it's not let me change the color here. It's not an insane different type of storm here. It's still a little bit of a smaller storm, but it's expected to, expand a pretty decent amount due to the wind shear that the storm will be encountering here in the northern Gulf of Mexico, as the storm will continue to push its way over here to the northeast. The big question is where does the eye wobble to more? So it's a little bit more of a interesting scenario, and every little wobble could count to who gets the worst storm surge and who gets the worst of whatever. So but if we take a look here at the 00Z models here, this is from obviously the latest update here on the models. We can clearly see majority of those models did push down to the south. The reason why we did push the National Hurricane Center did push their cone down to the south a little bit too, starting to agree with the models. We're seeing a lot of more of that consistency right here in that Sarasota, Venice area. As the storm continued to push off to the east-northeast, as it was, expected to get pulled to the northeast, that did definitely play a big factor when it came into some of these spaghetti models here. And that's kind of why we're seeing some of these spaghetti models coming in a little bit more off to the south here. So even though, majority of these models when we woke up this morning were kind of in the Tampa Bay area, now we've seen it push down to the south. The question is, could we see a little bit more push up to the north? We could. We're about 24 hours out, so really is going to be unlikely at this time. But right now, still I would say this area still needs to be paying attention to for possible landfall, because even though we're seeing a majority of these models kind of staying in one area right here and a little bit more of a greater area and confidence in where it could be making that landfall, we still cannot pinpoint a location for landfall, due to some of these hurricane models still bringing it near the Tampa Bay area, and we'll go over those here in a second. But the intensity is also one of the biggest things that we're paying attention to very, very closely as well. And as we pay attention here to the hurricane intensity forecast, still a Category 5 system, will be weakening and going down to a Category 4 here, probably by the 2 a.m. advisory, if they find the pressure continuing to go up in pressure. The more lower the pressure is, the more stronger the system. The more higher the pressure, the more weaker the system is here. But we can clearly see, no matter what, this storm will be really reaching itself and will be going down over here to a Category 1 status here in the next 48 hours. Unfortunately, here in the next 24 hours, if we take a line right here, majority of those models still keeping a Category 3, and some maybe even a Category 4 here that we could be seeing possibly here in the next 24 hours before making that landfall. So obviously the intensity is still kind of on the book here. Taking a look here at the latest recon, we can clearly see 908 millibars was the first time they dropped it and went through the center here, now reaching 916 millibars currently. So that is one more up than the latest advisory here, and we'll get the latest advisory here at 1 a.m. Central Time. But we can clearly kind of see that they have been passing through the center obviously over the past couple of hours, and we've been seeing a little bit more of that weakening as it's continuing to push up over here to the northeast. So that is good news for whoever is going to get this storm here. That is some good news right now. The big thing that I would like to say, and we'll talk about this here shortly, is when that shear is going to impact the storm and what we could be expecting during that time with the wind shear. So obviously we're going to be expecting these 00Z models to come out. The model runs soon. Currently here, this is the 18Z GFS. Let's take a look at that. You can clearly see, if you take a look at the spaghetti models, kind of more bringing it down over here in this region, the GFS not taking it there. So that's why it's a little confusing here with the model runs compared to more of the Pinellas County, Tampa Bay area, and then the model runs are bringing it more up to the north. The spaghetti model is bringing it more down to the south. So it's a little bit confusing, and that's why there's still that possibility here for a northern type of tropical system here in the west coast of Florida. We could be seeing some changes, but that is the GFS run here. And let's head into actually maybe some of that wind here. We can clearly see very strong storm, 966 millibars here, so pretty strong storm still. If this is correct, this will bring some pretty heavy rain, obviously, into the Tampa Bay area, and then very, very strong hurricane force winds into the Tampa Bay area as well. And we'll continue to see that kind of change off, and then we could be seeing still some hurricane force winds going inland as well, and then we'll kind of push off over here to the northeast at a quick pace. So that's something to pay attention to. The 18Z Euro kind of bringing it in the same spot, maybe just a little bit more off to the south here, but still bringing some of that hurricane force of winds into the Tampa Bay, more into the Sarasota and Bradenton area, and then we'll obviously continue to race off to the northeast as well. Then we kind of take a look here at the Canadian. This one's been a little bit, this one's been very, very the outlier over here, but still bringing it now closer to Bradenton and Sarasota, maybe right in between, still bringing some of that hurricane force winds. A little bit more of a weaker storm there according to the CMC, and then the Icon model bringing it right here into the Tampa Bay as well as a pretty big storm. And this is actually the 00Z that has now just come out here for the Icon. So we're seeing a lot of consistency when it comes to these model runs and the operational runs. We're seeing a lot more consistency here than I would say the spaghetti models, and that's why we're kind of a little confused and can't pinpoint an exact location here for this tropical system, just because of what we're already still seeing. So it's still a lot to pay attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours. What are we going to expect? The storm will continue to push up over here to the northeast, and then the Icon, the brand new 00Z right over here, brings it into the Tampa Bay area with some pretty gusty winds going through there. So very big question still on the table, obviously, on where the storm could be making landfall. If we head into the H-Wharf model, one of the hurricane models, we can clearly see over here in the next 3 hours on what the storm is anticipating. For the H-Wharf model, this is the 18Z run. Obviously, the storm is a little bit more, we'll have to wait for that 00Z model to come out. Brings in a pretty strong storm over here into the Pinellas County and Tampa Bay area right here, and we'll bring that up into the northeast. That will bring in the outer, the outer eye wall, obviously, into the Pinellas County area and the Tampa Bay. And let's say hypothetically that the H-Wharf is correct, that will bring a lot of surge into the Tampa Bay, and that will definitely not be the best case scenario for the Tampa Bay. The H-Mon has been pretty consistent as well, just maybe a little bit south, maybe St. Petersburg there, that could bring in some hurricane force winds as well, as that will continue on. Then you bring up the HAFS A, we can clearly see a little bit more off to the south here, Bradenton area, as a still possibly a low Cat 3, we could be still seeing that, and then that will go off to the northeast. But notice how none of these hurricane models are kind of following the spaghetti model. So that's why we're seeing a little bit more, obviously we need to keep an eye out, obviously, on this very, very closely. The GFS, the 18Z, we're still having that run right now. We're going to be having that 00Z coming out here soon. So something to pay attention to. And obviously, as we go into tomorrow, we do have that slight risk here for the Florida Peninsula to have that severe weather threat for possible tornadoes, as the storm will be bringing in some of those outer bands in this area. So if we wake up maybe to a tornado watch in this area right here, or we could be seeing it early tomorrow morning going into around 8 a.m., 9 a.m., depending on when all the storms kind of arrive. And we'll talk about that here shortly here. Let's pay attention right now here into the discussion, because I feel like the discussion is going to be one of our biggest things that we're paying attention to currently here. Let me pull up this really quickly here, and I'll read this discussion for you guys. So the discussion does say here from the National Hurricane Center as of the 11 a.m. or the 10 p.m. advisory here Central Time. The NOAA and Air Force Hurricane Hunter aircraft has been investigating Milton again this evening, providing a number of center-fixed flight level wind data, drop zone measurements, and other valuable observations. Data from the aircraft confirmed that the hurricane has regained Category 5 intensity with maximum winds near the 145 knots and a central pressure low as 902 millibars there. More recent aircraft observations showed that the central pressure has risen somewhat, so the latest advisory intensity is adjusted slightly down to 140 knots. This is also consistent with the latest subjective DVORAC intensity estimates from both TAFB and SAB. Right now, this is about the cone here, and this is, I know, mostly what everyone is more focused on. Sensor fixes from the aircraft and satellite images indicate that Milton's heading and gradually turning toward the left, and the initial motion estimate is now about 0.55 10 knots. The system is being steered by the flow between a trough digging over the Gulf of Mexico and a ridge near the Greater Antilles. Milton should move northeastward on Wednesday with a slight increase in forward speed, with the center of the hurricane reaching the Florida Gulf Coast in 24 hours or so. Thereafter, the system should turn east-northeastward to eastward and move over the southwestern Atlantic off to the southeast United States coast. The official track forecast is very similar to the previous one and is generally a little north of the model trackers. So, once again, it is a north of the model trackers, but follows the actual model predicted cyclone center location. So, obviously we're having that disagreement here, just like what I was saying here. We did see a lot more of that. Obviously the hurricane models do bring it up to the north here, and some of those other spaghetti models do bring it more off to the south, and that is why we're seeing a little bit more of a different type of scenario here according to the National Hurricane Center. This but follows the actual model predicted cyclone center locations. This is a close to the blend of the latest GFS and the Euro model solutions. Again, it is critical to remember that even at 24 hours out, it is still not possible to pinpoint in an exact location here for the Florida coast. And if you are just joining in and you have any questions about the storm, make sure to leave it down here in the chat. I will try to answer them the best I possibly could here. We are paying attention to this tropical system, obviously throughout tomorrow as well. The satellite is bringing it off to the northeast, so that's good news, right? Or, it's bad news for whoever, is expecting that storm, but that does give us a little bit more of kind of an idea on where it's going to go. If it kept moving off to the east-northeast, we could be seeing a lot more model shifts, so that's kind of why we're kind of paying attention to it very closely here. So obviously, if you are in these areas, you want to keep an eye out on some of these storms very, very closely. This could be a very, very big concern. We're going to wait for those 00Z models to continue to come out here right now. The storm will be impacting the west coast here of Florida in the next 24 hours out. We're gonna read the next thing by the National Hurricane Center in their discussion here in one moment. At least the good news is that the storm is starting to weaken. That is good news right there for us. So that is some good news that the storm is weakening. So we are going to continue to pay attention to this storm very closely here. Going to continue to pay attention to it. Obviously here, this is a big concern here for us. But if you're also curious about the severe weather threat for tomorrow, we're going to still see some of those outer bands kind of arrive in the morning here for South Florida. South Central Florida could be dealing with some pretty big impacts from some of these outer bands early tomorrow morning, and that will bring the possibility for tornadoes. So a tornado watch could be issued at some point as well. So I'm going to pull up, a little bit of something here. This will give us a little bit more of an idea on kind of what we could be expecting here. So let me give us this. There we go. All right, so this is Zoom Earth right here. And if you don't know what this is, it does give a, great satellites here that we obviously need sometimes, but the wind forecast is something that we really need right now. And obviously there it is. There's our storm currently right there, continuing to push off to the northeast. This is the wind speeds. You know, obviously the storm might not be the most accurate, or this model might not be the most accurate, but still could pay attention to it. Let's head into a day frame right now. We can clearly see some of those winds already going to be starting to pick up according to this model, and I believe this is, yeah, so this is the GFS model run. 55 miles an hour over here in Bradenton. Go over here, brings it in over here to the next couple of hours. We could be seeing some pretty strong winds according to the GFS, bringing, but once again, you take a look at the GFS, brings it into the St. Petersburg, and that would bring some pretty big areas over here in the Tampa Bay with some pretty big storm surge. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of big things that we have to pay attention to. The wind gust reaching up to hurricane force wind gust, so something to continue to pay attention to very, very closely here. You know, 82 and Holiday. Obviously we might be seeing a little bit more of an uptick with the winds than this model and all of that, so that's something still that we need to be paying attention to very closely, as we could be still seeing a category 4 here at landfall. So I mean, no matter what, we're going to see a major hurricane probably make that landfall here somewhere on the west coast of Florida. The good news is we're starting to lower it down a little bit more, but still a lot is to go on. So this is from the National Weather Service Tampa Bay here. Let me pull this up really quickly. Let's start off here with the potential impacts for the tornadoes. So the tornadoes right now, as we can clearly see, let me just pull this up right here. So for, you know, according to the National Weather Service here of Tampa Bay, we can clearly see for several tornadoes here in that orange, that's stretching all the way over here from, you know, really the Space Coast all the way down over here into the Keys as well. And that will be when those outer bands start to arrive, and that could cause a little bit of those issues right in this area. Then the Tampa Bay area also kind of slightly in the orange and the yellow. Obviously, this could change on where it makes that landfall exactly here, but several tornadoes could be possible. Scattered locations may experience tornadoes and waterspouts, with a few of them possibly strong or violent in intensity. Good news is we're not seeing many tornadoes right now. If we head back on out here, this is a big one right here, the flooding rain. This is a big one that we want to obviously pay attention to for how much rainfall we are expecting here in central Florida. You can clearly see over here for the west and central coast of Florida, the red is pretty extreme as well. That is major flooding rain. And that, you know, some areas, you know, over here of the coast, that's not even including the storm surge that could be over here as well. Make sure if you do have any questions, make sure to leave it down in the chat below. I will try to get to them as much as I possibly can for you guys. Right now, obviously, our biggest threat is the wind and the rain. That's going to be, it's a double maker here that we're seeing. But for this pink area, man, stretching from just really south of Orlando into the Tampa Bay area, St. Petersburg, Lakeland, you know, parts of the Space Coast, major flooding, extreme flooding actually could be seen by this. And then if we take a look here at the where's it at? The wind potential, still kind of a little bit concerning here for the west coast of Florida. 111 mile an hour or greater max winds possible. Now this is not exactly fully updated. This is from the 5 or the 8 p.m. advisory, I guess. That's when they kind of you know, posted this out there. So obviously we could be seeing a little bit of different scenarios here. And let me see if I can find that update for you. Here, let me see if I can find that update here for you and see if I can find the update here for you. But, you know, obviously we got a lot to pay attention to. That is for sure when it comes to this tropical system, because, you know, we still have some models bringing it up to the north. The hurricane models at least are bringing it up to the north, and the spaghetti models bringing it down to the south. So still, everyone, I feel like, even though, you know, people are in the Tampa Bay are like, oh man, it's not going here, it's not, you know, we still have that possibility. All right, so here's the latest threats and impacts here. Here we go. So this is the latest threats and impacts here according to the National Weather Service Tampa Bay. Here's that forecast cone, as you can clearly see. starting to get a little bit more tighter, obviously, as we're only about 24 hours out. We can clearly see, though, that Tampa Bay, you guys are still in that greater 110-mile-an-hour winds could possibly be seen there. Still 39 to 57 in certain of these yellow areas. That could be still a big thing with tropical storm force winds, as this wind field is expected to expand. Still that red, though, that is hurricane force winds. So you can clearly see, no matter where you live in Central Florida, you are most likely going to be getting some hurricane force winds, obviously more for the west coast here of Florida, especially on where the storm will be making that landfall. Heading into the storm surge threat, still in the pink here for majority of this area. You can see this will most likely be updated, I would say, just trying to figure out exactly where the storm goes. The flash flooding threat, obviously still very intense for the potential for extreme flooding rainfall here in the pink area. And then for the tornado threat, still in that orange area right now. Let's actually head in over here. Let me pull up the kind of the future radar here, because I know this is kind of something we all like to pay attention to closely. So let's get the future radar kind of on here. This is the HRR model. This is the 02Z. Let's go to the 00Z. This will give us kind of a representation on what we could be expecting here for the forecast going into tomorrow. So let's go a little bit hour by hour here. Obviously, this is a little bit later because I don't know the 2Z only goes out 18 hours. So we're going to go to the 00Z here. So as of right now, let's go to the time, 12 a.m. over here. If the 00Z obviously stays the same, we could be still seeing some of that rainfall already starting here on the west coast of Florida, and that is already going to start some of that flash flooding potential, even though the heaviest is still yet to arrive. Then we continue to pay attention to it. 5, 6 a.m. We'll start to see some of those outer bands really start to ramp up here in Central Florida. And that will be a big thing here for the flash flooding threat. And then, but these are the bands that we really want to pay attention to very closely here, as that will bring in some very gusty winds. So here at around 10 a.m. tomorrow, so according to the HRR, this could bring in some very, very gusty winds, and some of these stronger outer bands could be reaching the west coast of Florida. So Spring Hill, Tampa, maybe even Orlando could be getting some pretty big ones. A little bit of line of thunderstorms over here in southern Florida here, so that's something to pay attention to as well. But then we head in over here into around 3 p.m. tomorrow. This is when we kind of see some of that wind shear kind of try to cut it off here, and kind of will push up majority of that rain up to the north. And that's kind of why we're seeing that majority of that rainfall threat kind of in this region right here. So something to pay attention to. Let me get the forecast cone kind of out. We'll keep the projected track on. But zooming back here into Florida. So this is 18 hours from now. So 3 p.m. tomorrow, this is what we could be expecting here. This is the onesie. There we go. I don't know why it switched back. But we can clearly see really big outer bands will possibly be coming through. So into the Tampa Bay area, 9 a.m. tomorrow, we could be seeing some pretty big bands starting to come through with some gusty winds. Then we could be seeing a little bit more of some different scenarios here at 1 p.m. This is what we're going to be focused on the most. If this model is correct and it does bring it in, we could possibly be seeing some very devastating amount of rain that does go in through the central part of Florida. And that is because we're starting to see some of these orange, the red, the yellow. That is, some pretty heavy rainfall. That's at 1 p.m. here. We can see some of those, outer bands, really big outer bands here. 3, 4 p.m. really heading into the Bradenton, Sarasota, all the way down over here into parts of Naples. Could be seeing some of those outer bands coming in later on tomorrow afternoon. Then we'll push through the Tampa Bay area here at 5 p.m. and then we'll clearly see maybe that northern eye wall. So once again, that's that shear will kind of try to cut it off here and kind of push it all up to the north, and that's kind of why we're seeing more of a northern type of push here on these future radars here. Kind of can see that here, brings it in, maybe a little bit more of a weaker type of system here, but still, once again, this big outer band right here that we're paying attention to will continue to push off over here to the east, and that will bring heavy amounts of rainfall here into central and eastern Florida. And then that northern eye wall will bring that heavy rain into the Tampa Bay area, very, very strong winds as well. So really the storm will be kind of more of the north side loaded according to this model. If we head to the latest model here, that's 02Z, still coming out But once again, still looking at that shear, kind of cutting it off, kind of pushing all that storm up here to the north. And you can clearly see that some of these outer bands will be really, really heavy at times. Same thing with the Tampa Bay area. Very, very heavy rain could be expected here. So unfortunately, we could be seeing a very, very heavy amount of rainfall here in the central parts of Florida. So this could be one of our biggest concerns right here. So we're obviously going to be paying attention to the storm very closely. If you are, in this area and you are in Central Florida, please make sure you are prepared. Obviously, we don't have as much time left to prepare, but this is still a major storm that needs to be on the lookout here, especially when it comes to almost over a foot of rain in these areas. So let's get back over here to the spaghetti model, or the models here, because I do want to say that we did get the 00Z models out. We're starting to get some of them out, at least. The Icon, I believe, is the only one that we have out currently right now. I don't know what in the world's going on with my thing here. There we go. Okay. So taking a look here, this is the GFS, still waiting for that model to come out. The Icon 00Z is still coming out here, bringing it into southeast United States. Here, we'll go over the rainfall and what the Icon thinks. This is going more to the north of the spaghetti models. But you can clearly see does bring it into the Pinellas County, Tampa Bay area. It does seem like, and once again, this would be one of the worst case scenarios here for Florida. And I will say, Helene, the spaghetti models were weren't the best with Helene, and the main operational runs were better than the spaghetti models with Helene. So that's something to keep an eye out on very, very closely here, even though we're starting to see majority of those spaghetti models pushing down to the south. We could be seeing some of these storms really pushing up into the Tampa Bay area. And remember, if you do have any questions, make sure to leave it down in the live chat below, and I will try to answer as many as I possibly can here for you guys. But Icon brings it in 958, 962 millibars, bringing in that heavy rainfall as well. And you can clearly see the Icon model does bring in maybe just a little bit more off the coast here, but west coast of Florida, still parts of the Tampa Bay, pushing up into maybe Pasco and Hernando County. Could be definitely, I think that's Hernando County. Correct me if I'm wrong, but still bringing in possibly over maybe a foot and a half of rain, and that's according to the Icon. So obviously this is something we need to pay attention to very, very closely here. We head into the winds. The winds are very, very, strong storm still. Very, very strong winds could be expected here from this storm currently in this area. So no matter what, I would say we could be expecting possibly over 100-mile-an-hour wind gust in this area right here, just from this tropical system here. So we're going to keep an eye out, obviously, on that very, very closely here. As there is a very big chance here we could be seeing some. I've never seen something be this possible with big flooding here in the central part of Florida. But this is the brand new Icon model here. Let's see what the Recon is kind of finding here now. So we haven't gotten an update here from the plane yet, so we'll wait for that for a little bit here. The Euro AI 12Z, yeah. Majority of these models bringing it into the Bradenton area, so that's why I'm a little confused here when it comes down to that. So a little bit of something, that is for sure. But even though with the 18Z here for the GFS model, we're still seeing the American model bringing in, once again, kind of the same area the Icon brought it, with that heavy rain. And then the European model, kind of the same type of area, maybe just a little bit more off to the south. So some of these areas could be seeing a major flooding issue for Central Florida. So this is something we don't usually see, obviously, here. It does seem like the 18Z Euro ensembles have shifted up to the north. So that is a little bit concerning if you do live in the Tampa Bay area. It has shifted a little north. And, you know, once again, if we talk about the storm surge here just a little bit more, wherever the storm makes that landfall could really depend on that storm surge for you. And that could be one of our biggest concerns if you live on the coast here, especially when you're seeing this pink color and the purple color breaching almost over 12 feet here of storm surge. So remember, if you do have any questions, just leave it down in the chat below. Try to answer as much as I possibly can. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe also for more frequent updates. That will be much appreciated here. Really hoping, you know, the storm starts to weaken, which it is. The question obviously is, how strong will it be when it makes that landfall? And if we do head back on over to this and head over here to the forecast cone, let's see, let's see, are we getting some out of these? Yeah, so here right now currently is some rain from the storm, and that will start to approach. So you can see a little bit of rain showers starting to approach the Tampa Bay area, and then a little bit of a bigger rain showers still continuing here off to the west coast, and will stay off the coast for a little while here, and then will eventually make its way inland and possibly cause some flash flooding. So, but let's see here. So category 4 hurricane here at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. So this will be making that landfall overnight. So that could be making the storm a little bit more scarier. If you do not like hurricanes, and it could be overnight here, we could be seeing that. But it does seem like, you know, if you're just tuning back in here and haven't seen the National Hurricane Center forecast yet, Sarasota and Venice, that is where the storm is kind of most likely going to impact and make that landfall. At least now, it's going to make that landfall somewhere in there. And I-75 here, we can clearly see, you know, could get some very, very high winds in this area as well. But that's some at least more good news here for the Tampa Bay, but also, you know, it's more bad news here for the more southern part here of the West Coast. But obviously it's still, no matter what, this is going to be bad news for whoever could at least get impacted by the storm more than anything. So we're definitely going to have to pay attention to the storm very closely. You know, I need to, you know, does anyone know the times on when the GFS and the Euro comes out? Because, I mean, man, I don't even know, like, when these models start to run anymore. Like, I have no clue. No clue at all. No clue. Let me take a look here. Because I don't necessarily think you know, we still obviously have, I know the Euro won't update until, like, oh, here we go. The GFS is now updating. As I said it. And that means the CMC should be updating pretty shortly, because I know they kind of update here at the same time. But let's see what the GFS is saying here in the next 24 hours. And that's when it starts to make that turn. I would say the GFS is kind of saying more of a northern type, you know, more of a northern push here than northeast. This is, you know, and then the question is, does it, you know, go a little bit more off to the north? Does it just race off to the northeast after that? But once again, I'm not seeing it really making that landfall in this, or, you know, in where the spaghetti models are taking it. So that's why it's a little bit more of a different type of scenario here that we're paying attention to. And obviously having to watch this storm really closely, because we could be seeing a lot. So obviously we're going to wait for the GFS to kind of update itself here, and then the CMC will kind of update itself as well, and the HWRF and all that will not, you know, the brand new hurricane models will not come out until like 1:30 a.m. So very interesting, but let's see if there's any update from the recon. Not an update from the recon. Head back to the satellite, because this thing, I definitely know, does look very interesting on the satellite. Not a lot of wobbles we're seeing now. Definitely a big wobble earlier, that is for sure. Make sure if you do have any questions, leave it down in the chat below. So I do want to point out really one thing here, and obviously I know the track is one of our biggest things that we're having issues tracking, and everyone kind of wants to know, hey, where's the storm exactly going? Well, I do want to say this is important from the National Hurricane Center here, from its latest advisory. And by the way, before I get to it, if you're just tuning in right now, the storm is racing off to the northeast and is really trying to pick up its speed currently here. And in the past, in about 48 minutes, look at this, it's already moved way past its kind of area where it is. So this storm will be approaching pretty quickly here, and we'll be racing off. But as of the 11 p.m. advisory, wind speeds are 160 miles an hour, so still a Category 5 storm here, with the maximum wind gust near that core 200 miles an hour. That's very, very strong wind gust there. Storm is now moving off to the northeast instead of the east-northeast, and the pressure is continuing to go up here as it will be weakening. The official track here is very similar to the previous one, and this is a note from the National Hurricane Center. The official track forecast is very similar to the previous one, and is generally a little north of the model trackers, but follows the actual model predicted cyclone center location. So obviously the biggest updates will be at 5 a.m. That's going to be a very, very big update for us here. At 5 a.m. we could be seeing a very, very big update here due to the models that we are currently going to be seeing here. So this could be really something to be paying attention to. Obviously, as we go on, these forecast models are definitely one big thing. And let's take a look here at the spaghetti models here. I do want to actually give you guys a little bit more here. So as of right now, in the shelters right now here in the state of Florida, for these counties, so we do actually have Hillsborough County, 4,968 people are in that. In Hernando, 287 people. In Pinellas, we have 3,228 people in there. In Sarasota, 3,950 people. Let's head on over here to the spaghetti models. Let's see, spaghetti models. Can't remember which one I had it open with. Here it is. So this is the latest 00Z spaghetti models. Majority of the models did, or mostly all of the models did push off to the south here. We did see a big southern push with the models, and that did forecast the National Hurricane Center still saying still keeping it more on the northern part of these models, but did push it down to the south a little bit more as well. So let's head back over here. All right, so the GFS, we do now have the 48-hour run out. We do have the 48-hour one out now. So let's see exactly what we're kind of going through. Let's see what the GFS has now saying updated here. All right, so the GFS, obviously we went to 24 hours out off the west coast of Florida here, 962 millibars. And then brings it same area, I would say, that it really brought it into earlier, you know, with the GFS model run exactly has been really consistent in the Bradenton and Tampa Bay area. Has been really consistent. And that's kind of why we're still paying attention to the Tampa Bay area and Bradenton, because I feel like, you know, no matter what, the spaghetti models are a lot more south than the main operational runs. So this is a very, very, you know, very massive storm that will be bringing very, very dangerous flooding, I would say, and, you know, very winds that could be very, very big for whoever gets the center of this, but as well as the storm surge, man. The storm surge will be definitely very, very big, impactful for some of these areas. So we're going to obviously wait for any more updates here. We got to wait really until 5 a.m. from the National Hurricane Center to update anything more at 5 p.m. here. But we could clearly see here the GFS does bring it back into Bradenton, so pretty consistent here on where the storm will most likely be going. So we are going to constantly see more of a, I mean, it's a little confusing, and I kind of get where people are, you know, going with it. You know, we're having the main operational runs, you know, continue up into that northern motion, but then the spaghetti models do bring it into the southern motion. Now, if we do go over here, and I go over here, currently here, I don't know if they've updated the total accumulation. They did, you know, or the GFS model has updated its accumulation. Very heavy rain still more in that Tampa Bay area, and will continue on throughout the central part of Florida. So, I mean, this is a very, you know, dangerous storm that we could be obviously anticipating here. The Carolinas need to be on the lookout for, or not the Carolinas, Georgia. It will actually, and South Carolina need to be on paying attention to this, as well as it will be bringing in some major storm surge here as well. We got a lot to pay attention to, man. We got a lot to pay attention to. I know a lot of people have definitely boarded up their houses here in the state of Florida. And just a lot of people have gotten prepared today, and I know today was the last full day to get prepared. You know, you do have a little bit of time if you do live in Florida. You have a little bit of time here early in the morning to get prepared for the storm. Let's actually head back into the forecast here for that future radar. And I want to talk about this with the track, because this is a little bit more of something here with the track. So, you know, here we go. We can clearly see right here, this is as of 11 p.m. So heading into the next hour here, this thing updates every hour. I don't know how it stays up with itself, but already starting to see some of those rain showers coming in from Milton here. Cape Coral, Naples, you guys have already actually been having some flash flooding, it does seem, and you guys aren't even, you know, the storm hasn't even been there, but unfortunately you guys will be having those bigger rain bands coming in tomorrow as well. The good news is you won't be getting, you know, an absolutely absurd amount of absurd amount of, you know, rainfall and flooding, but definitely still need to be paying attention to it as we go on. Then as we continue to see this around 3 a.m., some of that rain showers could pick up really over here by the Space Coast. Orlando could really get some flooding. Tampa still continuing on with some of that slight rain showers. You know, it could get heavy at some points here in those little yellow spots. Now, obviously, this model could be incorrect. We could still see an incorrect model here, but obviously still something to be paying attention to just in case. Just in case. So, taking a look at this right here, we can clearly see 5 a.m., definitely some heavy bands kind of going in through several parts of Florida here. These could possibly be, and this is what we're kind of talking about here with these, that will be a possible tornado threat right in that area. Then we clearly can see, this is where it gets very concerning here. This is where it gets very concerning. for Central Florida and the west coast of Florida. So at around 9 a.m., we're already starting to see some of those bigger bands starting to come in here for Milton. There's the eye way down here, and that will continue to push up over here to the northeast as well. You know, that heavy rainfall that's up to its north is going to be a major concern. So taking a look at this for Tampa, we take a look here at Tampa. Look at this. Let's just zoom in here to Tampa and see kind of what we're looking at here. 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3, 4, you know, and that's as far as it goes out. And then, you know, even though we thought that is a lot of rain, we still got this heavy band that's going to come through. And then even more of this out the northern eye wall will come in. So it's really a big rainfall threat. And that's not even just Tampa. Orlando could be getting some of it as well, and Lakeland especially as well. What I would say, though, tomorrow afternoon, 4 p.m., the storm is expected to make that landfall overnight. But some of these outer bands are going to be posing a big tornado threat here. Will pose a tornado threat. So, I mean, it's like such a big concern here. If you do live in Central Florida, it's going to be a big concern here with flash flooding. And then also, you know, depending on where it makes that landfall, it could also be a big impact here when it comes to rainfall and the wind as well. So, really have a lot that we're wanting to pay attention to very closely. Obviously, this storm is a very, you know, dangerous looking storm. It's going to be, you know, this storm has already had its record in the books here. Already have seen, you know, just a lot of records in the book from this storm already. So definitely is a lot to pay attention to currently. And I do want to actually show something. So if we go over here to the kind of the, you know, oopsies, go to the mid-level here. So right now, on where this storm exactly is, we could clearly see off to its northwest. We could clearly see that dry air, and that's kind of what's going to bring it in and kind of feed it in to kind of, you know, choke off the storm. And that's why we're kind of going to see a little bit more of a northern type of issue here for Central Florida. And by the way, if you do have any questions, just make sure to leave it down in the chat. I will try to answer them as best as I possibly can here. But right now, obviously, the system is not going through any dry air. It is going through its moist air, and it will continue to go through moist air until it gets to the west coast of Florida, and that's when we will start to see some of that wind shear also kind of head into some of those areas as well to kind of choke off the storm. So, really is something to pay attention to. The storm is starting to move quickly, and we can already kind of see that here. As it's, you know, as in an hour ago, the center was right here. So the storm is moving up. The question is what do we wake up tomorrow morning to? Do we wake up to a more stronger of a storm? Well, that's a big possibility, but you know, obviously we have the question. You know, the questions are still going to be on that table, and that we're going to pay attention to very, very closely here. So, you know, we're watching the storm continue to push up to the northeast, expected to weaken into a category 4, and then we'll weaken to a category 4 as it is off the coast, or continue as a category 4 as it's off the coast here of Florida. Obviously, the biggest threat will be the rainfall here. And let's see if the CMC is now updating. So the CMC has now updated, and the one thing I will say with the CMC, with the CMC model, it has been more on that southern side, and now it's still, I mean, let's go back into the 12Z model here. Did bring it in kind of into that Bradenton area, and now I would say kind of brings it maybe kind of the same area, maybe just a couple miles south. But the CMC is still, let's see what there's, yeah, the rainfall is going to be a big thing. So the CMC model has updated it, and we'll go in, not into the Pinellas County area, but just a little bit more. But still, once again, these model runs, the operational model runs, keep it up here into the Florida West Coast. So very interesting storm that we have. This is a very interesting storm. Let's head into that storm surge, though. Let's head into the storm surge issue that we're kind of looking at here. Head into the Tampa Bay first. If the storm follows where it's supposed to go and goes to the south, this will obviously be one of the best case scenarios for the storm surge, at least potential, but still a very big issue when it comes to rainfall and wind. As of right now, according to this map, we can clearly see the yellow and blue area greater than 1 foot or greater than 3 feet above ground. If you were in the orange area, that could be greater than 6 feet above ground. And then in some of these little red areas over here in the parts of the eastern Tampa Bay is above 9 feet above ground. So then you head on over here to Sarasota. Very, very, kind of split all over the place. Some of these, mostly these islands, obviously above 9 feet, maybe even above 6 feet here. So in certain areas, then obviously the more south you go in the Fort Myers and all this area right over here, this is where it's going to be a big concern, because that storm is going up to the north here. That is where we're going to see majority of that storm surge rushing in and causing big water issues over here for those more inland areas just to the south of the storm. So that will cause a lot more of the issues here with the storm surge with this. Obviously, wherever the storm goes will play a big impact on who gets the worst storm surge. And if you haven't already seen the storm surge warnings do include majority of that whole, pretty much the whole west coast of Florida here, stretching from Cedar Key all the way down over here to just the Key, to about the Keys, and now including the east coast of Florida here, going into southern Georgia. We could be seeing some of the storm surge warnings there, and then some storm surge watching, including in South Carolina and then parts of northern Georgia as well. So very, very big thing. And if we take a look here at the wind history, we obviously can see over the last advisory and over the last couple of days, it's really has grown and is really starting to pick up the size. That is for sure. It is starting to pick up the size of the storm. So, I do still got something to pay attention to, obviously, with the rainfall and where the exact pinpoint of this location is going to be. Unfortunately, it isn't the easiest to track here, even though the spaghetti models are very, very, very set on one location. The main operational runs are more to the northern location, so it's a very interesting thing here. And I do want to actually bring this up really quickly here. This is from Mitch West here on X here. If we go over to Mitch West here on X, this is one of the National Weather Service. National Weather Service uses this a lot here for their wind gust forecast, and we kind of can clearly see these little red areas. This is, obviously this will continue moving inland, so these little red areas, kind of just this big circle has that. You take a look at it. This is some pretty big winds that we could be expecting here, maybe even 120, and this is wind gust. So a wind gust here of 120 miles an hour. So just 10 mile an hour less than a category 4, and that will continue inland here. And that is really once it starts getting into that grayish, darkish, reddish area there. Heading into the Tampa Bay, we could clearly see that's reaching up into possibly over 100 mile an hour winds. Some areas getting into 84. So something to pay attention to, but really the main area for these winds could possibly be in this area. But once again, the wind gust forecast here is still on the northern side of these models. So, and for this one right here, this is a different one, brings it even more closer to the Tampa Bay, and that will bring in even more stronger wind gusts. The more closer you are to the eye, the more storm surge, the more wind, the more just biggest impacts you will get. This is a storm that the west coast of Florida has not seen before. And I mean, for a direct hit of Tampa Bay, it has been over 100 years since Tampa Bay has been a direct hit. So it is a very, very big concern here for some places, you know. It's a very, very big concern. And obviously the flash flooding potential, I mean, is just out of this world here. Tampa Bay, Orlando could be getting some pretty big area lakelands in there as well. The high risk for some significant flash flooding is possible. So, I do want to say I am going to end the stream here. I do appreciate for everyone kind of coming out here and watching the stream. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe here. I know I'm on the road to 100 subscribers, but it's all up to you if you want to subscribe or not. But make sure to also, you know, check out my X page down. You know, it will be in my YouTube bio. Make sure to check that out for the latest information on the storm here, especially going throughout tomorrow. There will be a lot of posts on there tomorrow. But just make sure to pay attention to the storm very closely. If you live in the Tampa Bay area and you're going down, you know, from Tampa Bay all the way down here, South Fort Myers here, could be really seeing some pretty big impacts from the storm. And we will definitely have to be paying attention to it tomorrow. So I will have a video out tomorrow. I will try to be doing a live stream tomorrow night. Just follow my X page to make sure you know the updates. But make sure to leave a like, subscribe. And I hope you all, if you do live in the state of Florida, please make sure you do stay safe from the storm. Please make sure that you are doing what you need to do and you are staying safe from this hurricane, as this could be one of the worst for the west coast of Florida. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your night. Stay safe out there, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video or live stream. Thank you, and bye-bye.